Joey, excellent job as always. This is speech number 7, I believe.
Right.
And this is research your topic. And you picked something I think that was something that we could relate to, even though not all of us are soccer fans and know much about it. Much like golf and some of the other things you brought to the table, I think you're able to bring things to us that are outside of what we normally interact with, but in a format that's digestible and that we can relate to in some way. And so some of the things that I really liked about this particular speech is that what you were talking about was more generically strategy than it was specifically soccer. And again, I'm not familiar with soccer. I don't know the details of it, but the fact that you were able to bring me along to where I could understand your points was to me a bit of a gauge in terms of how accessible the content was. And a lot of what the goal of this particular project was to include data, to research it well, the effectiveness of a speech when you're going to walk in and convince an audience. One is, and especially if they have no background or familiarity with you and whether or not you're actually qualified to speak on the subject, is to back it up with other sources. And I think coming into this, you kind of let me know, this is going to be a little bit more opinion. It's a little bit more subject matter expert, and I think the way you were able to establish some of that was your particular background in soccer. You kind of mentioned the number of years, familiarity with it, things you've observed. You then did provide some stats that were helpful, and contextualizing some of those stats were also helpful. So doing the population, you said 1.2 million people, and then you qualified that by, or gave us background to say that actually is about the number of kids in the US within this age group. And that sort of helps us go, oh wow, okay, so I know it's a difference, but how much of a difference is it? Just the raw data doesn't really provide a lot for the audience, contextualizing it and helping them feel it. So I think you started to sprinkle in some of those things, some of those particular stats. So what I would improve on though is, again, bolstering some of that data. I'm guessing that with the loss, there's been a lot of analysis, opinion, feedback in terms of what's wrong with the United States approach. I think sprinkling in some of that to say, here were some other sources, some other people's perspective on what we went wrong that either aligns to what you've said or is counter to what you've said. And if you're going to take a counter stance, then you really have to come with some data, because otherwise it may just be an opinion off the top of your head. And how are we going to trust you over someone else that maybe is an analyst or has been in the field for a long time? So I think establishing that's going to be pretty critical if you're going to convince everyone. But in terms of taking topics and making them accessible and digestible, your organization was great. You had 3 core points. You didn't overextend yourself in terms of the content. And to me, what I look for in effective speech is it memorable? Am I actually changed, or has it affected me? Because the worst speech to me is one that's going to be disposable. You hear it, words in, words out, nothing, no effect. And I think that you did a good job of cleanly organizing this topic to where I left with 3 key points that I'm going to remember. Now I think it's just a question of, can you back it up enough with other data to where I trust it? But great job overall. Thank you.
Thank you.